Welcome to Trade Show Guy Monday Morning Coffee for November 13th, 2017. Thanks for joining me. I'm Tim Patterson. I'm Trade Show Guy, owner of Trade Show Guy Exhibits, a project management exhibit company based in Salem, Oregon. Also the author of Trade Show Success, 14 Proven Steps to Take Your Trade Show Marketing to the Next Level. And, of course, my blog is at tradeshowguyblog.com. If you're listening to the audio version of this, you may not know about the blog, but if you're on the blog, you already know about it when you're watching the video or you're listening to the audio. So either way, thanks. Happy to bring you this week an interview with speaker, writer, trainer, consultant Roger Courville of Event Builders. Roger and I get up to a number of things in our conversation, talking about bringing value, making connections, broadcasting versus conversations, how to strike up a great conversation, and much more. And here is how it went. Welcome to Trade Show Guy Monday Morning Coffee. I've got Roger Courville from Event Builders on the line. Roger, it's a pleasure to speak with you. I appreciate your time this morning.
Tim, the pleasure is mine. Happy Monday.
Yes, we apparently are fellow Oregonians for the time being. I don't know where you grew up, but you're in St. Helens area now, out of Portland, and I'm down south of Portland in Salem. So,
and I just tell people Portland because they know where that is.
They know where that is.
I've been in Portland since the late '70s, so it's as Oregonian as they come.
Well, let's see. I lived in Portland as a radio jock for 11 years, from like '83 to '94, before kind of escaping and moving back to Salem. So I know Portland very well. Love Portland. It's a great city. So,
oh well, Oregon's a great state. So
tell me a little bit about what you're doing. We talked kind of in the green room there about Event Builders and what you're also doing. You're a guitarist. I like that. So
yep.
So
don't go anywhere without a
you
pick.
do a lot of public speaking. You did that for 10 years. You know, I spent 10 years as a Toastmaster and did some contests and things along the way. And I have spoken at events. It's not something I really look to do, but obviously you did that as a career for a while. I'm curious to know a little bit more about that.
I did. Well, at heart, I'm a teacher. And so, in fact, it all kind of fits into the same bucket. In 1999, I accidentally got a job in the conferencing industry, which audio conferencing became web conferencing, became video conferencing, right? And that's the fundamental technology that makes webinars and webcasts and that kind of thing possible. And I mean, it was a complete accident that I ended up in the industry. But what I found, remember, this is right back as we're getting into the .com.
The bubble and all that stuff.
Right,
yes.
All that kind of stuff, right? So we're riding high. IBM was our largest client, but what was really interesting is I figured out that our value proposition we had a very real business value proposition about how we help people connect and communicate and collaborate. It wasn't just, I moved my grocery store online and you should throw $1 billion at me, right? So I literally started studying seminars, and I bought every book I could find, which were all about in-person seminars at the time, and started studying how do we promote seminars, how do we present at seminars, right? And then I wrote one of the first 2 books in the whole world on the world of webinars, and here we are how many years later. So that process of being a teacher took me down the path of being a speaker, being a trainer, coach, consultant, wrote multiple books, did a bunch of consulting for people in the webinar industry. And inevitably that blended to, ended up where I'm at now, which was with Event Builder, which is a virtual event production company, which handles the parts of people's portfolio, of communications portfolio, that happens to be online, right? Because nobody's here to say we should get rid of trade shows.
Right.
That's stupid, right? It's another tool in the tool bag.
Exactly. And I've always thought that no matter how digital we go with anything, there's so much value in face-to-face that will never go away. And in fact, after the recession 9-10 years ago, it really hit a lot of the shows, and a few of them went away, but certainly the ones that are in industries that people are finding valuable, they're growing, and there is a lot of value to being face-to-face. So we talked also a little bit about how to bring value to those attendees. What kind of things, from your perspective, are you looking at?
Can I get theoretical on you just for 30
seconds?
I
guess if you gotta.
Exactly. That
everyone has a theory, right?
Exactly. That $4 will get you a triple Fufiato at Starbucks.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? It comes back to the medium theory, which is that the medium, it's called the medium theory or the transmission theory of communication, which is that the medium through which we connect and communicate transforms the sending and receiving of signal. And that's kind of a no duh, right? It's different when
Right.
I'm on the telephone, when as opposed to when you and I are on video right here versus when we're face to face. And I think the lesson that comes out of that is that we need to get really clear about what is unique and powerful about each and every medium. Right? We don't say, I don't ever write something down in Microsoft Word because I use the telephone. But somehow we say, well, trade shows, webinars, they're close enough, and webinars are really like the redheaded stepchild of the trade show industry. And the answer is no. It's a different medium for a different time and a place. But remember how newspapers really found themselves struggling with the advent of the internet, right? And some of them went out of business.
Yeah.
Some of them reinvented their business model, and some of them went, oh, what is unique about actually having a physical piece of paper? There are still paper newspapers, right?
Yes. Right.
And so there was a transformation where people had to either figure out who they are, and I think the same is true with trade shows, right? Comdex goes from 20,000 people in Las Vegas, and now we don't do that anymore. But they got more targeted, and people went, "Oh, what is unique, and powerful, and irreplaceable about that face-to-face experience?" And the same is true for webinars. There's things we can do virtually that we can't do in person. There's things we can do in person that we can't do virtually.
Yeah. So you've obviously spoken at trade shows over the years. So from your perspective as a speaker there, so that's on the education side as opposed to on the trade show floor side. There are certainly speakers that do presentations in booths that are as a whole different thing. They're trying to draw a crowd and generate leads and that sort of thing. So what was your experience as a speaker, and what kind of things did you do and learn along that route?
Yeah, well, I mean, as a speaker, that's either, keynote, front to front of the room kind of thing, or some kind of a breakout. But one of the things that has transformed, especially in the last, 10, 12 years for me, is an increasing sense of saying, how do I as a speaker participate in value creation for the person who's hosting the conference or the trade show, which means that increasingly that has been getting away from show up and throw up, right? I walk on stage, I'm fabulous for 30 minutes and I'm gone. It just is an increasingly small paradigm, as opposed to, can I show up in advance? Can I sit at a special lunch table? Can I sign books? Can I? Is there something special that I can do? I've done tech booths in a hallway where it's like after the show between 1 and 3, Roger's going to be over here to answer additional questions for you, right? So I mean, this question is, how can we get creative to create value for the people that are taking some of their precious time and money to come to your event?
Yeah, and I've been to events where they've had name speakers, like a Tony Robbins is the keynote speaker, and everybody knows who that is, or Gary Vaynerchuk. Most people know who Gary is these days. I saw him speak online years ago. I had no idea who the guy was, and he came out to share this quick story because he came out, and I thought, who is this guy in ratty jeans and a T-shirt that
dropping F-bombs?
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly what he does, but he was totally passionate about what he did, and I understand the attraction. I don't, it doesn't do a lot for me, but I understand the attraction to something like that because I think he's very smart and he knows his audience really well. And I think that's very key as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that you just brought out, I think, something that's worth commenting on, which I think some meeting planners or event planners struggle with, which is, what's the value of celebrity? Right? I put somebody on stage, and somebody's a draw because it's they used to be the president of something or whatever. What's the value of content versus experience? Back to what we were just talking about, right? Increasingly, I can find content, meaning educational content, in a lot of places. I don't have to go to the trade show to get it. Right? So now the question becomes, how do we create unique value? And I mean, personally, I'm like, I love the kinds of shows that have increased the amount of time between sessions for networking, have even incorporated purposeful ways of saying it's not just about the people who are on stage. It's about how do we connect peer-to-peer people with purpose. Because that might be where I meet you in the hallway while we're both, getting a treat.
Yeah, exactly.
And something happens there.
And that's the face-to-face. Yeah.
Right. Yep. And that happens when you and I have time to connect, as opposed to I'm grabbing a cookie and a drink and I'm off to the next session.
Right.
Right.
And connecting is obviously very important to you because you named one of your, I don't know if it's a company or something, the connectorship. So obviously connection is very important. And how do you create connection? A lot of people are not good at it, I would think. And so obviously you've come from a place where you've had some good luck or good experience doing that.
Yeah.
Good results.
Well, and since my professional speaking career had a unique turn, which was 2/3 of my work was online, right? I'm speaking 100 times a year, and that's 30 trade shows and 70 times in webinars, webcasts, and whatever. I've traveled the world as an in-person speaker and done it another 3 times virtually, but that's a question, right? And to me, I'll share with you just one of my own biases for the online thing, which is the difference between publication and conversation. And most webinars are functionally like publication, meaning most of them have the same interactivity as a YouTube video, which is a big fat bumpkus, right?
Right.
And that's like publishing stuff. And publishing stuff does not cut through in a world of short attention in a way that conversation does. And how do we connect and communicate? Generally, it's by me asking you a question and going, Tim, how are you? How's the weather? What's most important to you when?
There's a book I picked up recently about.
Go ahead.
I was going to say there's a book I picked up recently about how to ask good questions. And this is from a sales perspective, but I think questions are very important. So you kind of made me want to go down that bunny trail, but we don't have to go too far. But I think that is important. In other words, when you're in an elevator with someone, people always talk about the weather because they don't want to talk about anything else. It's like, oh boy, it's sunny today. Oh boy, some snow's out. So weather is but it's a starting place.
Right.
And so, how can you go from there to valuable questions that create value and show that connectorship on a different level?
Yes. An acronym that I learned a bunch of years ago was FORM, F-O-R-M, Family, Occupation, Recreation, Money.
Okay.
Right. Which is, hey, do you have kids? Or, obviously everything's got to be careful in context, right? But whether that's about family or personal connections or what do you do for a living? Or I like to say, how do you keep yourself busy during the day? Instead of saying, what do you do for work or something like that, right? Or how do you keep, what do you do for fun? But for me, I think as coming back to the world of events, to me, that actually comes back to what is that speaker and audience member relationship. And oftentimes, there's very few times when the keynote speaker, in the past sense of just being the sage on the stage who does all the talking, there's very few times when that is the primary form of value creation relative to connection where conversation is happening.
Yeah.
And whether that's a trainer or facilitator who in a breakout session is doing more facilitation than speaking, right? More hands-on application than just pushing more PowerPoint slides and talking.
Yeah, and I've been in some sessions where you just kind of go, okay, I know this, I kind of know this, I know this, I know this, and then there are some you go, oh my God, they're just this hose of stuff it's filling your brain with stuff that you can't get it down fast enough. It's interesting, and that just comes from the experience, perspective, where you are, where they are, has all sorts of fun stuff. I like to question, by the way, what's your livelihood?
Oh, that is a great question.
I heard that actually in a locker room once. A couple of old guys talking, and one guy says to the other, "What's your livelihood?" And because they obviously hadn't met, And I thought, I remember that. So it's kind of like, what do you do for work? What do you do during the day? That sort of thing. But what's your livelihood is more specific, but also it doesn't ask what's your job? Who do you work for? So yeah. Anyway,
right. How about
Roger? Go ahead.
It was just a variation. What brings you joy? Which for some people could be work or livelihood, but some people may.
Playing the drums all day.
Exactly.
Roger, I'm going to cut you loose. We've been talking a long time. We could talk forever, but I think 10 or 15 minutes was all I really wanted. It's a pleasure to meet you. And so if people want to track you down, what's the best way to do that?
Well, you're going to appreciate this as a musician. So Event Builder, just those two words, .rocks. So believe it or not, if you go to eventbuilder.com, it'll end up at my company's website and you'll see my team. But literally, actually, what it'll do is it'll forward you to eventbuilder.rocks, which is actually also a suffix out there on the web because we had a bunch of musicians who happen to work with us.
Very good. Very good. Well, since we're not that far away, we'll have to figure out a way to jam sometime. Just Make it happen. Who knows?
In person. There's
In
a crazy
person,
idea.
yes. What a crazy idea. Roger, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thanks again.
Likewise. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks again to Roger Courville of Event Builders. As he mentioned, go to eventbuilders.rocks to find him. This week's Trade Show tip of the week comes thanks to Camelback Displays in Spring, Texas. I found a fun list on their blog. The list is called 20 Top Trade Show Marketing Ideas. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I'll put the link in my show notes. But I have a few, and I like that they used quotes to kind of lead into each section. For instance, in the section called Break the Rules, they have a quote from Rod Serling: "Being like everybody is the same as being nobody." So, have you ever been driving at night and noticed the car behind you had no lights on? Depending on the road, most cars will look invisible. The same thing happens at trade shows if your exhibit looks like all of the neighboring booths. It's important to stand out, look unique, and have impact so that your display pulls in people and therefore brings in sales leads. So, another one, be smart. Do the basics. And a quote from Hamlet in this one: "Though this be madness, yet there is method in it." You've heard it all before, but there is a reason you've heard it before. Take care of all the things you need to do for pre-show, during the show, and post-show. It will pay off. Plan your exhibit way ahead of the deadline, and think about other trade shows you may adapt it for. You may find that your most important show needs to utilize an island exhibit, but there are smaller events later in the year that need something smaller, so why not save time and energy by planning for both now? Some components of the island may work for an inline booth if you plan for it. So there you go. Here's another one from Chief Communications Officer Uhuru. Hailing on all frequencies. Our Star Trek is coming up here. Dust off your email blast list, your target prospect list, your client list, your employee list, your mom's favorite recipe list, and get to work letting everyone you know who needs to know about your grand marketing plan of exhibiting at the next trade show. So there's one. So just tell everybody. Broadcasting on all frequencies. MacGyver says, if you got something to say, you should say it, or it's just going to tear you up inside. Plan collateral marketing material, update your business cards, develop a social media plan, add show information to the website, buy ad space in the show guide, set up lead capture. So all of this stuff, make sure you get through it all. And finally, Mick Jagger, his quote is, "Anything worth doing is worth overdoing." So tie it all together for the day of the show. It is important to be consistent. Business cards and brochures need to be up to date with the same look. People need to work the booth who can do what is needed, like smiling all day and being in a good mood and greeting people and having a good time. And the team has to look and work like a team. That means dressing for the event, whether it's casual Friday clothes or logo shirts and caps. Decide what offers you're using on show day and tie to it in social media, your website, and marketing handouts. Have a plan ready for organizing and storing leads. Number one, it's smart to figure out what to do with your smartphone. There's ways to do that. Take orders, do proposals. If you have a website that's being used as a sales tool, be prepared to use a laptop, a tablet, or even your phone to present information. So anyway, make a plan for any important sales prospects or clients that you know are attending. Trade shows are also a good time to do short impromptu surveys or give product demonstrations. So thanks to Camelback Displays again for that nice piece from their blog. Again, you'll find the link in our show notes to the entire post. So this week's One Good Thing, I've been trying to figure this one out. I like the band Noise Shaper, and I've been listening to a lot of them lately. A band that formed, I think, in the late 90s, early 2000s out of Berlin, although they didn't form there. That's where their home is. Mostly reggae, but modern is opposed to rootsy, a lot of electronic music, dub music, all fun stuff. They're mainly a duo from Berlin, but always bringing outside musicians and singers to add to the mix. And so Noise Shaper, I think they have like 5 albums out. The last one was still quite some time ago. They may not be a happening thing anymore, but they had some great stuff out there. So that's it for this week. Thanks for joining me on the Trade Show Guy Monday Morning Coffee.